Welcome back to the Eclectic Pagan Podcast. Hi there, this is Baz.
Hi, this is Tom.
Hello, it's Sherrie.
Welcome back here, everyone. This is episode 26 for the month of September. You want to go ahead and talk about our next interview?
Yeah, we have Lisa and Dave from the Elven Path joining us today, and they have a pagan spirituality that is based upon what they call the Tolkien legendarium, especially J.R.R. Tolkien. That's J.R.R. Tolkien, the author of The Lord of the Rings.
Right.
But especially his prequel to those stories, which was published after his death, the Silmarillion, which they use as a sacred text. And I think that those of us who are pagan, this isn't my path, but it's certainly one that I find interesting, and certainly one that has the potential of a lot of appeal, just because of the tie to J.R.R. Tolkien and Lord of the Rings and all those works. So I invite you to listen to what they have to say.
Yeah. And they have a website. It's www.TheHiddenRealm.org. Where you can go ahead and get information. It's a very extensive site. They've posted a lot of stuff. It looks really nice. Tons of information there. Everything from their beliefs, symbols, calendar, frequently asked questions, their resources, all kinds of information. If this is something that's of to you, feel free to go and take a look at the site. And that site's also going to be in the show notes as well. Welcome to the Eclectic Pagan Podcast. This is Baz.
Hi, this is Tom. Blessed be.
Blessed be. And we'd like to welcome Lisa and Dave here to the show. Would you like to give a little more information about Lisa and Dave there, Tom?
Lisa and Dave came to our attention. They're participants in our podcast news group, and they have a very interesting approach to pagan spirituality. And correct me if I'm wrong, either or both of you, that seems to be based upon the writings of J.R.R. Tolkien. Most of our listeners are probably familiar with The Lord of the Rings. And Dave and Lisa and their partners have a website. And Lisa, why don't you explain a little bit what the website does and what it's about? Excuse me.
Hello, Tom. Hello, Baz. Thank you for having us on your show. We're very honored.
Oh, it's great having you.
Oh, boy. Where do we start, Dave? Where do we start?
Lucky he asked that of you, not of me, because I'm not good at synthesis like that. So I'm a detail man.
Yeah, Dave has actually been involved with a form, I guess, of this spirituality, but it was more internal than external, because he internalized the mythos of the Silmarillion, which are the backstories of J.R.R. Tolkien, along with tons of the History of Middle-earth series, which I think that, counting the Children of Huron, we're talking about 13 books right now.
The Children of Huron is the one that was just released recently, right?
That is correct.
Because I know I've seen that on the New York Times best-selling list.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's actually, some of the material, as I understand, was already presented in the History of Middle-earth series, but it had like a lot of text notes and those types of things that didn't really help the story flow. So they thought that they would do it as a standalone, without any of the notes, without any of the, well, my dad said this, but it might really mean this, those types of things.
Right.
So we have the Children of Huron as number 13 in the History of the Middle-earth series now.
Now, the author of this is actually one of Tolkien's sons. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'll let Dave take this.
His grandson. The editor is Christopher Tolkien, who was Tolkien's son.
Right.
He's working with his son, Adam Tolkien, to put the book together. Well, actually, it's out now, but that's who was doing it.
Amazing. Now, tell me how this. We all love these stories. We love the mythos and the values that the stories teach. How does this make the jump for you into spirituality?
It did it all by itself for me. I had never read the Silmarillion until April of 2005. Don't ask me why I waited so long, but I did. And I knew upon reading it, I knew it in every cell of my existence that this was the mythos that I was seeking for all of the pagan paths, etc., that I had been exploring. And just to let you know, we do have some people that are Christians that are able to follow our path because there is no moral conflict, if you will.
Right. And, that actually was one of the questions I was going to ask you. Of course, Tolkien was a Roman Catholic, and there are aspects that, it seems to me that Lord of the Rings is fairly quiet on the question of religion. There's an oblique reference to the gods related to the people who are the riders of Rohan, I think, in the book. But aside from that, there's very little. It's practically agnostic on the whole question of religion, doesn't even mention it.
I realize that. And I think in Lord of the Rings, it was definitely left out so that you could experience probably the hero journey on a more pure basis without any, tainting.
Right.
However, if you go to the historical of Lord of the Rings, which Tolkien himself, well, my feeling is that he was channeling through his learning of language because he was very adept at language. But he started writing those backstories in 1917.
So that actually predates what he was doing with Lord of the Rings.
By a long way.
By 40 years.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. It's pretty incredible. He was pretty young when those things started coming in, and what I find incredible about it is that he was actually able to write this material while he was in a trench fighting in World War I. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
I don't know if I could do that.
Okay. Dave, I'm sorry. Dave, how about you? How did you come across this? Were you similarly moved by the Silmarillion, or does this?
Yes, although it was much further back. At the time it was published was 1977, and I was 12 years old then. And even earlier, my mother had read The Hobbit to me at the time I was recovering from a long illness. So that's how I first got exposure to Tolkien stories and knew that there even was a J.R. Tolkien out there.
Right.
And then some years later, 1977, when the Silmarillion was published, it was during the period that I was really looking. I've always had a very strong link to the natural world and trees, the sun, the moon, water, things of that nature. And when the Silmarillion was published, I was internally questing for a link to that made sense. And the Silmarillion was what did it for me with its grand mythos, its grand saga.
So I've got that book sitting on a shelf somewhere at home, and for some reason, the first time I picked it up, back in the mid 70s, I suppose, I just couldn't get into it. And now I'm just dying to take another look and to.
Oh, it's a hard read. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, some people find it hard going. Yeah.
It is not as flowing a read as the Lord of the Rings or the Hobbit. It's certainly. What happened with me was when I was reading it, I had to read several sentences over again to make sure that I actually understood what was going on, because Tolkien has a way with language that he communicates so much within a sentence that you just kind of have to go, oh, this is so grand, I can't even take it all in. I have to read that again. Makes it a little bit longer and harder to read.
Well,
one of the things that I figured out was that the audio version of the Silmarillion, along with reading it, helped me quite a bit. To hear it and to read it at the same time was very helpful for me. So if you are looking into that, you may want to. We have some resources on our website that you can check out and download an audio version and check it out.
Now,
that really helped me a lot.
The book itself actually functions as a sacred text for your group. Is that true?
I would say that would sum it up. Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So so these stories are real for you in a way that they obviously go beyond just fiction. And
yes, although if you read the belief statement on our website, what you say is true. However, it's not true in the sense of like some of the people who say, well, I am a fairy or I am a vampire sort of thing. It's more we relate to the archetypal energies embodied within the sagas, and the sagas themselves have an internal structure, which is what we really groove on.
Okay. One question I have is, it looks to me that you mentioned in your email that you celebrate rituals in connection with your path, and are you celebrating the traditional pagan celebrations, solstices and equinoxes, or something else out of the books?
Yes.
Some of them coincide, but
some of them coincide, incidentally, but no, we actually researched in the appendices of Lord of the Rings, at the Return of the King. The appendices have the entire calendar. And Dave has done an article on those holidays, if you are interested, and we have posted that on the website under the Quendi, which Quendi means elves. It's what they called themselves, meant speakers. They had their own calendar. They had 6 seasons, which were uneven, where the longer of the seasons were at the solstices, which makes sense because the sun still, it's pretty still at that time, and then it kind of races through the other seasons.
I see. And are you invoking deities when you celebrate these, or not necessarily?
No, evoking is a better word for that. We've had some discussion on our site where, we call the energies of the Valar, but we do not invoke them, and we find it not necessary.
Okay. Explain to our listeners the distinction you're drawing between invoking and evoking.
Okay, well, I will go by a common definition, at least here in the States, where evoking is more like calling the energies within, like maybe your workspace or your ritual space.
That are already there.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that is true. Already there. Where invoking is bringing them into you and somewhat channeling their souls or spirits within your body. We find it not necessary.
I see. One of the things that comes up very strongly for me with my Christian background that I notice in Tolkien's story is these characters hold strongly the value of redemptive self-sacrifice, which is, of course, central to the notion of Christianity. Does it also find itself into your form of paganism?
Well, because we're not using the Lord of the Rings as the sacred text, we're more using the Silmarillion.
Not so much, then.
It's hard to... Because I really feel that the Lord of the Rings was more of that hero journey that I was mentioning.
Right.
But the Silmarillion's emphasis is different. It does, though, speak of the types of things that people do, well, actually not people, but the elves and the Valar and the Maiar, that would do actions so that it prevents the actions of the fallen one, which in these stories is Morgoth.
Oh, so there's a dark energy.
Oh, absolutely.
Over and against the.
Absolutely. And any of them, like, they're very definitely confrontive and combative against this energy. Where that doesn't necessarily happen in a lot of pagan mythos, where it's kind of like you don't know who the good and the bad guys are in other mythologies. And I can see why some Christians can come to this path, because that is comforting to know which side is the good one and which side is the bad one.
Right.
I myself resonate somewhat with the Christ energy, but it didn't quite all do it for me. It was like, wrong mythos. This doesn't even resonate with me. This actually resonates with me, but I find that it has a lot morally in common with the Christian morality that is portrayed. And so we do have people that are pagan and or Christian involved in this path.
Oh, I see. They continue to practice both at the same time then.
Oh, absolutely. And all we have to do is during our ritual, for the Christian folks that feel comfortable with that energy, we invite the Christ consciousness energy into circle for those who feel comfortable with that. Mm-hmm. For those who don't, and I'm not one of them, I'm more of a pagan-type person, so just so that you know that that's not what I do.
Right.
I just don't.
Okay, Baz, did you want to jump in here?
Well, I mean, I suppose a typical ritual, where most of our listeners typically are pagan, primarily probably Wiccan.
Yes.
A general ritual, obviously they'd all be a little bit different, but are these rituals drastically different than, say, like a typical Wiccan ritual? Is there still
I would say different enough. Different enough. We have 7 directions.
Okay.
Because what happened was that there's 7 pairs of Valar, even the ones that are single, if you will, which would, if you read the stories, that those would be Ulmo and Nienna. Okay. Mm-hmm. We found that aligning them in a way that is easy to come in, and plus it actually resonates with much of the legendarium stories, the way that they're laid out. We also noticed that Tolkien went into depth about getting directions, south being Hjarmen, east being Roman, these types of things, and even had symbols for these. So it kind of like naturally made its own system. We actually tried to not Wiccanize as much as possible. However, many of us have studied Wicca, so we can't really undo all influences. However, we've really tried to keep that to a minimum and really try to let the legendarium dictate how we end up doing circle. And even the elements align differently. Not all of them differently, but different enough to where it's kind of weird for Wiccans at first to water's always in the west. Wait a minute.
Right.
And we don't have water in the west.
Okay.
We have water below.
Well, I'm getting the impression from what you're saying that those in your group who are specifically pagan have come to you by way of Wiccan. This has been the next step for them.
Not exactly.
No.
Actually, we have a heathen guy who's been really active, and
yes,
a number of different paths are presented.
Oh, so if a bunch of Wiccans came to ritual just to observe your folks' ritual, can you give us a visual picture, perhaps, as far as what would we see? How are things set up? Is this a more of a formalistic? Is there robes? Is there what type of?
Is it outdoors?
Is it outdoors? Is there tools involved? Kind of give us if you could, a visual picture generally as much you can.
Well, interestingly, we're going to actually be doing a public ritual for the first time in western Montana in Helena at the Helena Pagan Pride coming Saturday.
Okay.
Normally, we do not do ritual. We'd love to do it outside. But because of the circumstances of all of us not really being in the same geographical space together, we can't meet physically for ritual. We meet at the computer. It's kind of funny.
We actually, a lot of us meet through Skype, and of course, Skype, you have to be tied to the PC, so therefore.
And then some of us call we have also an account where we have Skype out, where we call a free conference call service that actually records us. So we call the conference call service, and then many people with cell phones that don't have a computer can call into the conference call number, and we're all connected.
See, now those of us who are about as technologically sophisticated as sock puppets like I am would have a really tough time with this. And I can't believe we've gotten this far in the interview without asking, what's the name of this path? What do you call it?
We call it Tia Eldalieva, and it is Quenya, which is one of the Elvish languages out of Quenya and Sindarin. Sindarin's the one that's featured in the movies, just so that we can differentiate.
Okay.
Quenya is the older language and more set aside for ritual, and we thought it was leaning more toward a spiritual path, so we used that. And luckily, it just happens to be the more, complete language of Tolkien's language repertoire. And it's also the easiest to learn. There's free online sites, etc., where Sindarin is a little more difficult to learn. You'd have to get one of David Salo's books that's like $50 to learn it properly. Tia eldalieva means the elven path, and eldalieva means the people of the stars.
Very interesting.
So the Tia is path or way, if you will, and eldalieva is the Eldar or the Elves.
Okay.
So it means elven path.
One question I'd like to ask you, and I ask it in some form of practically everybody we have on. I'm curious about what form your daily practice takes.
Daily?
Personally, I find ritual sort of empty if it doesn't grow out of a kind of a daily spirituality, either prayer or meditation or something like that.
Well, I think most of us have daily meditations, but we haven't exactly formalized. Our main formalization has been with the Wheel of the Year rituals and the full moons. But
yes,
I
we do
think
have
each of
full
us
moons.
has
I forgot to add that.
Oh, and Lisa, you came up with that meditation, which we also use in the rituals, but we can use it on our own also.
Yes.
Yeah.
I know a lot of Wiccans, I mean, from the time they get up in the morning to the time they go to bed, have certain prayers or mantras or affirmations that connect them to the goddess and the god as they go through their day. And I'm curious about whether the way of the elves has something similar or is even open to something similar. Maybe it's not something that you would find necessary or desirable.
Yeah, I would say that many of us, I can even say that some of us wouldn't even need ritual, to connect to that energy. Some of us are just natural.
Yeah.
Okay, my husband being one of them. He is just doesn't need it. I mean, he is an elf when he wakes up in the morning. So it seems. Okay, and I'm not saying that in an otherkin viewpoint. I'm saying that in the viewpoint of the morality and the value systems that are portrayed of the elves in the Legendarium.
Okay. What's an otherkin? Is that like a muggle?
No.
I don't know.
The best overview would be at otherkin.net. They're basically people that see themselves as a mythological creature as an alternate identity. Basically.
Okay.
Well, some of them are mythological. Some of them are actually real animals. And,
True.
And,
some of them have more.
Yeah,
of the,
and some are they resonate with angels. They resonate with vampires, and some of them resonate with elves, and not necessarily the Tolkien elves.
Mm-hmm.
But our emphasis is not on our identity. Our emphasis is on a spiritual path. So anyone, no matter who they are, could follow this path.
Right.
And that's what we've designed it for. And in fact, we don't even really like to call it a religion, because someone that's Wiccan could follow the Elven path. Someone that's Christian could follow the Elven path. Okay?
Yeah.
Someone who resonates with otherkin energy, even if it's not Elven, if they wish, could follow the Elven path.
What is your feeling now in terms of what sort of following the Elven path has at this point? Are they all people who have hooked into your website, or are there others? Are there other groups, or are you guys pretty much it?
Well, we're unique in that there are other groups, but let me differentiate what's happening. For instance, there are groups that are more exploratory of their identity as elves through either DNA or past lives and those types of things. Some of them are related to Tolkien, Wendy, and the Eldalia. Some of them are not. Some of them are general elven energies. Some of them are even galactic elven energies. If you go to elinari.net, you can find out at least one of those groups, okay, that believe that they originate, that they had past lives and originate from a galaxy far away, which is okay, but that's not our emphasis. Mm-hmm. There's other groups that are definitely Wiccan and use the Legendarium elements and sprinkle it into the Wiccan. Okay, that's not what we do. Okay, we actually really, really try to stay true to the Legendarium, and then if other things present themselves from other spiritual paths that may intermesh and help weave the fabric that Tolkien didn't get to weave in 56 years of his channeling of this path, then we'll use it. But if there's anything that is even remotely weird or a strange energy, or that it doesn't work, we all toss it out. And most of the time, the group gets a feeling of whether things are right or not. So it's not even only one person that determines this. All of us try it out and see if it works, and we kind of get a feel whether this is actually really legendarium or not. And trust me, over the last 2 years, we've had our things where we keep getting more refined, so we have changed the path over the last 2 years. Mm-hmm. We think we're on to something good now, though. We think it's pretty darn solid. It's got a good foundation now.
Yeah, I'm getting
But it is not Wicca with, like, Gandalf thrown in as the god and Galadriel as the goddess. No.
That might be kind of interesting, though.
That is not working. But there are groups out there that do that.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I'm getting hints, though. You're using words from that I associate with theosophy and like channeling. Now, does this path predate Tolkien, do you think? Or did it originate with?
No, I'm not sure about the path, because this is a modern invention, and I do not wish to mislead people.
Okay.
Okay, saying, oh, this is the path of the elves, meaning, like, that 5,000 years ago this is what the elves were doing.
Okay.
That is not what we're trying to do. We are trying to create a path that is useful today for humans today. Okay, or otherkin, if that's what wants to happen. But we're trying to create a path that is useful today. Now, what I will say, though, is that I do believe that Tolkien was tapping into something extremely ancient. That's what I will say. Okay. Maybe some of the things that he was tapping into were not even of this plane of existence. Thus, why we don't find, like, say, archaeology relics and those types of things.
Right.
Okay? So it could have even been on a different plane of existence. Maybe at one time those planes of existence overlapped. Mm-hmm. Okay? Maybe around the Lord of the Rings, which is about the end of the elves' time and the time for men, which that's very clear within the Lord of the Rings stories. Maybe that's where the overlap happened, and then after that the elves went into their plane and the blessed realm and what have you, and then men are what is on this vibration that we have currently.
It's sort of like the intersection of what you may call dream time with regular time as ordinary people see it. Kind of like that.
So
what may have happened.
So dream time is borrowed from the Aborigines.
Yeah, I'm just using that. That's not one of our terms that we formalize, but yeah,
okay. But I get the principles that you're talking about, though.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Of course, Tolkien was an expert in Norse myths and languages, but I don't see much of what you're doing here that even resembles Asatru at all. Have you had people from that path kind of approach you and show an interest in what you're doing?
Yeah, we have a co-founder, actually, that is a Famtrad Asatru or heathen practitioner.
Okay, that was the person you mentioned earlier.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and we've had some other people that resonate with, like, say, they found Wicca first, and then Norse Wicca, and then now they're Asatru practitioners. We've also gotten attention from some of them where they're like kind of seeing, ooh, how does this fit with me? And it's interesting for them to try on.
I see an immediate difference. I mean, most of those folks would consider themselves Reconstructionists. I don't hear you taking that tack at all.
No, but we are trying to stay true to the legendarium without going too far from that.
Yeah,
so
in other
on
words,
that level, we are sort of like Reconstructionists because we're trying to stay true to the path.
Okay.
I would say the big difference here is that whereas some pre-existing paths, be it Wicca or whatever, would use elements from the legendarium to add to their pre-existing mythos, ours grows from the ground up rather than from the top down.
Okay.
So That's basically it. We have the roots in the legendarium, and our tree and the branches and so forth are growing out of that rather than growing from the top down into it. Okay. I guess that's a good way to say it.
Or having the roots being in Wicca and then the branches being legendarium.
Right.
Yeah.
But I suppose getting back to this, my earlier question dealing with this ritual you folks are having this Saturday, I believe it was?
Yes.
Okay. Exactly what are you folks going to be doing as far as maybe giving us a visual picture? Kind of what do you guys have planned here so far? I know that you guys do most of everything internet-based. If this is going to be your first public ritual, it's kind of interesting for us.
It'll be interesting for us, too.
If you can you kind of walk us through it a little bit as far as kind
of
what
I'll do my best.
What the general idea is, what you guys are going to be doing?
Sure. First off, we created a flyer, if you will, so that people are not entirely, totally shocked by what we're going to be doing.
Okay.
What we have on that flyer is the breakdown of the 7 directions, and we also use the Kirth, which are the Elven runes, if you will. The dwarves had also used them in the stories, but they were the markings that would be put on the metalwork that was done by the elves and the dwarves. And, of course, the dwarves had their own language that they used the Kirth for. But there are specific Kirth symbols that resonate with those directions. We found 7 of them. Right. We also have aligned what the words are. We type them out in regular letters so that people can pronounce them. They know what direction they are. By the way, the other 3 directions would be above, below, within. Similar to the framework of Native American and I found out that also R.J. Stewart had done something similar, except that rather than being spherical, which we kind of work more with a natural shape, he was making more of an octahedron shape. Which is much harder, I think. But anyway, that's going to be the first thing. And then each of the directions have a pair of the Valar, which are the, if you will, the Elven pantheon. And interestingly, they were, husband and wife teams. So we have those husband and wife teams in all of the sectors that make sense within the legendarium material. And this took us a very long time to figure out. 2 of those are not married, which I was mentioning earlier, Ulmo and Nienna. Interestingly, they resonate with the water element, and the stories talk about water flowing underneath Arda and being in all places, so we aligned water with below to make sense of that. So we have all of those described, and then what we have is each of the Valars, for a lack of a better word, the name of them, and then their keywords of things that hit on them. For instance, Manwe would be the breath of Arda, so he's very air-like quality. Resonates with the mind, with focus, with communication, with sight, with justice and truth and working together, cooperation, those types of things. His wife is Varda Elantari, who is the Star Queen, and she is the one that is said to have created the stars, and she is the most revered by the elves because they are the people of the stars, and when they had awoken, they had seen Helluin, which is what we now call Sirius today, and said, and this is beautiful, and they were very much enthralled with the star goddess, if you will. And then we have each of the other Valar, which there's 14 altogether, and have their qualities listed. And so people can say, I really feel a resonation with, let's say Yavanna, who, by the way, that's what we're going to be doing the ritual for this particular time, because it's Isil Yavanier, which means the full moon, of the month of Yavanna, which is the harvest and the fruit. So
her name literally means giver of fruit.
I resonate with the corn goddess or the harvest goddess and really align with Yavanna's energy. But they're not going to be the same because, as you know, Odin would not be the same thing as Hermes, would not be the same thing as Thoth. Right. They're all different pantheons, and we respect pantheons and don't cross them over. At least I don't. I refuse to cross pantheons because there's just too many weird things that can come in and mess things up.
Sure, sure.
But at the same time, it's kind of interesting to connect with other different ways of doing things, and that's what we are going to be trying to demonstrate. So as we call in, and we call in the directions and that pair of the Valar at the same time, then we go to the next direction and do that, and we kind of construct the circle and call them in all at the same time.
So it sounds like there's going to be a lot of people in this circle then, I would imagine.
How many ever show up? Well, we just have no idea. They're expecting someplace between 100 and 200 people, maybe.
Wow, in
we
one
just
circle.
Don't know.
And that's at a public park.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you have any concerns about security or people showing up who wouldn't understand and are not tolerant of what you're doing?
Well, seeing as how they've had the Pagan Pride Festival for the last couple of years there, I think that they've pretty much got it worked out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
I think it will be okay.
What are some of the symbols of your path? I know Wiccans typically have the triple goddess, the pentagram, and some things like that. What are some of yours?
Well, we've been investigating that, haven't we, Dave?
No, definitely.
Because, interestingly, many of the symbols that we would love to use, we can't because of copyrights and those types of things. However, what we would love to do is have the Star of Irendial, which is a form of a six-pointed star that is within the works, that is resonating with what we now today call Venus. In the legends, Irendial was a half-elven sailor with a Silmaril on his head, which is what is supposed to be shining. And he sails on the horizons in the west and the eastern part of the sky. It would be really wonderful if we could have a Star of Irendial pendant or somehow be able to find other people that would resonate with our path. But that's not possible right now. So we have other alternates. We have some symbols on our website that we found as things that really mean something to us. One of which is, believe it or not, the seven-pointed or Elven star. Now, we do have an understanding that this isn't necessarily the Quendi star or the star of Tolkien. This is more of the general Elven energy. However, we've noticed a lot of correlations between 6 and 7 energy within the Legendarium, and we have quite an article on that on the website. But these are things that just come together.
I wrote both of them.
Yeah,
we're taking a look at that on your.
Today. But then again, I guess Wiccans don't have one symbol either. So they choose triple goddess or the triskel or a pentagram or the star of, some Wiccans I even know use a seven-pointed star because they like the Fey energies. Or the Elven energies, Elven being general term, elf, not necessarily the elves of Tolkien.
Do people on the Elven path participate or practice any particular type of magic as Wiccans frequently do?
Well, to be honest with you, I haven't needed to practice magic because what happens is that in meditation, I end up doing it in meditation.
Okay.
But if one were to want to practice magic, it's absolutely possible. The days of the week, interestingly, in the Numenorian calendar, which is also a 7-day week, they added Irendial being the sea day on what would be, I guess, a Thursday. Okay, and Saturday resonates with Varda and the stars. Okay, Sunday resonates with the sun energy, and then we have the sun aligned on the 7 correspondences. This is stuff that I had to figure out, and it took a long time.
Okay.
So there are ways to practice a magical type with this, but I haven't found it necessary because it's kind of interesting. The more that you really bathe in the energies of being an elf, the more that you end up manifesting just by thinking it and wishing it.
Okay.
However, but you can use sigil magic with the Kirth and or the Tingwar also. That's another way to do that. And that's something that we're actually looking into, and that'll probably be yet another book that'll happen later.
Yeah, let me just say here, each each kirith, which also relates back to each tengwa, which is both of those are different letter forms.
There's 36 of them, right, Dave?
Yeah, and
okay.
what happens is that each one has an archetypal meaning with it. So, for example, you have Palma, lamp. You have let's see, Parma, book. You have gate, and so forth. There's a whole assortment of these which have archetypal meanings, and you can use those both in divination, which we haven't got that completely worked out yet, but also to project your will outwards, which would be kind of like a spell.
Okay, so these are the kirith or runes, elven runes?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Now, if people would like more information on the path, how can they find it? I know you've got a website. What is the URL or address?
Well, that would be www.TheHiddenRealm.org.
Okay.
Make sure you type the word "the" before Hidden Realm, because if you type Hidden Realm only, I don't know where it takes you.
No place good, probably.
Probably not.
If I know
we
the
also
internet.
recently purchased another URL for a future book that will be elvenspirituality.com, ELVEN, spirituality.com, and that will also at this time forward you to the same place. So whichever is easiest for people to know.
Okay. And again, for our listeners, this is Lisa and Dave, and I'd like to thank you for spending the time with us this morning.
Yeah, we appreciate it.
Yeah,
we thank you so much. This has been an honor.
Yeah, very interesting take on a new pagan path.
No kidding.
Yeah.